What is the difference between this and this? Well, this is a piece of notepad. I can write on this, I can jot things down. I can turn it into a paper aeroplane and throw it out my bedroom window. Now this, on the other hand, what can you do with this? Well, I could order pizza. I could get burgers and fries. I know that inflation has affected everybody in the last 5 years, but you can still buy a baseball cap and a t-shirt. And if you shop in the right places, you can buy a pair of trainers or sneakers or sweatpants. But if I was to get a lighter and set this on fire and set this on fire, both of them would catch light and they would turn to ash and they would dematerialize. I'm not going to do that because I'm not completely crazy. But the truth is that both of these items on an energetic level are exactly the same. Both of them, exactly the same. The only difference is how much importance you assign to each one of those items. And the same principle can be applied to everything, whether it's an item, a person, a situation or outcome. So everyone watching this will agree that across the world, we give this more importance than a notepad. So what does that mean for you? Well, when you put an item, a person or an outcome or anything on a pedestal and you assign too much importance to it, you create an excess amount of energy. And that energy is found in your energy field, and then it ripples out into the world around you. And when you create too much energy, we call this excess potential. And in our universe, if you create too much energy and it generates excess potential, then the universe has no option but to nullify it and balance out that excess energy which has been created by you. The universe at all times is trying to maintain balance and create equilibrium everywhere. Now, if you think about an example, we all love talking about the weather. And on a hot day in warm, hot countries, the pressure, the outside pressure rises, and it rises and rises and rises and rises, but it doesn't keep rising forever. The pressure won't rise forever and ever and ever. At some point, the universe will interject and we'll get a storm or it will rain. We've all had those hot, humid, muggy days outside where you can almost take a knife and just cut straight through it. Well, the universe balances that out. The weather system balances that out by sending a storm, and then balance is restored, the pressure drops, and then the pressure will then start rising again in the coming days and weeks. And then the same will happen. It will rain again and the pressure will drop. So the pressure doesn't keep rising and rising and rising and rising. Balanced forces have to nullify that excess pressure, that excess energy, that excess potential. And the same thing can happen to you, sometimes with disastrous consequences. So I know that this topic can be a bit tricky. So in a moment, I'm going to tell you a really short story where at the end of the story, you have absolute clarity on this message that I'm explaining. When you apply too much energy to your desires, and it can be anything, and all you can see is your desire, and you put it on a pedestal and you transfer too much thought energy to it, you will create excess energy, excess potential. And the universe will neutralize that and it will balance out that energy, like on a scale. So the question for you is, how badly do you want your desire, your outcome, your person, your object? And what is it that you're prepared to lose or sacrifice in order to achieve it? And once you've got an answer to that and you've figured what that means out, well, then you've cracked the case and you crack the code. So I'm going to tell you a quick story now, which is going to sew everything together and you'll understand exactly what it is that I'm trying to say. But firstly, I'm just going to read you a small part from Reality Transurfing, page 80, something like that. Love generates positive energy, which carries you into corresponding lifelines. Idealization, on the other hand, creates excess potential, generating balanced forces intent on mitigating its impact. The effect of balanced forces is different depending on the situation, but the result is always the same. In general terms, it can be described that balanced forces debunk myths, depending on the object and level of idealization involved. The debunking may be stronger or weaker in effect, but balance is always restored. So about 15 years ago, I was living in London, and like most young people, or a lot of people in their early 20s, you move to the city for the hustle and bustle. But I grew up in the English countryside, and there was a big difference in lifestyle change. And after about a year, I got immensely homesick, and I missed the field, the meadows, the forests, the streams, the rivers, and some of my old life, but not all of it. Luckily, the job that I was doing, which I'd always wanted to do, I could do anywhere in the country. But it wasn't a question of just turning up at your local office and being like, hi, where's my desk? You had to go through a lengthy, convoluted process of getting a transfer, which involved an application, an assessment, a medical, giving a presentation, all this type of stuff. And there has to be a vacancy wherever it is that you want to go. But I went through the process and it took about a year, and I finally got a start date in my hometown. And for that year, I could think of nothing other than getting that transfer. I had everything planned out, where I was going to live, my routine, how I was going to slot back into the grooves of my old life. I had everything planned out. And for that whole year, I could really think of nothing other than the transfer. It absolutely consumed every facet and element of my thinking and of my life. And it was a pretty tricky, tough period. But I got the transfer and I got a start date. And about 3 weeks before I was supposed to start, I was out with some friends one evening, and one of my friends got into some trouble with local law enforcement. And I wasn't involved. I just sort of witnessed a bit of what happened. And as a result of that, I was subject to like an internal inquiry at work, which was completely normal. It's just the way business goes. And the inquiry took such a long time. It ended up taking several weeks. By the time it had concluded, I'd missed the chance to transfer. It'd come and gone like that. That was the end of that. And then the 2007 credit crunch had set in by then, which means there were no vacancies at all. And to say that I was completely crestfallen is an understatement. I was utterly devastated. And I didn't understand why this has happened. I didn't get it, because I put so much effort in and energy into this transfer, and it was all that I'd wanted. And it was literally just taken away from me. And it made me a bit depressed. And I was just gutted. I was like a compass without a needle. I'd lost complete direction. I didn't know what the future held or what it held. I just didn't get it. But after a couple of months, I sort of had to get my life back together, because I was stuck in London, but I was doing the job that I'd wanted to do, and there was no chance of me moving back home. And it was a tough period. But about 2.5 months later, I was out in the West End of London, which is like Times Square, where a lot of the tourists are. And I was in a coffee shop early one evening, and I bumped into a girl. We collided and we got talking. And then within 1 year, we were married, and we'd bought an apartment in the city. And even when I tell that story now, my hair sometimes stands up. Because at the time, I didn't realize why I'd got marooned in the city. But then the moment we met, I knew exactly what had happened. And I knew why. I hope that story ties everything together that I've just tried to explain concerning reality transurfing. and what it means for you. So like all of my videos, I hope that you've enjoyed this, and please like and subscribe, and I will see you folks on the next one. Bye-bye.